This is part one of a three-part conference, Can't We All Just Get Along? A conference on conflict within congregations. My name is R.New-Edson. I am director of WPA Ministries, Western Pennsylvania, Ministries of the Church of God. We live with multiple realities in this world, and we must negotiate a common reality. We bring to each situation different and frequently contrasting experiences, stories, histories, and we must create together a single shared story with a role for each and a role for both. David W. Augsburger, the Anabaptist author and professor of pastoral care and counseling at Fuller Theological Seminary, said this in his book, Conflict Mediation Across Cultures. Conflict is never high on our list of favorite pastimes. Very few people actually enjoy conflict. People dislike having to deal with conflict at all, and you will frequently find in individual lives and in corporate lives, as in the church, that people will run as far away from conflict as possible and will try to do anything to deny there is conflict or to have to deal with it. I believe that people think conflict is a bad thing, and that's part of the reason. They believe that conflict means that one person must be right and one person must be wrong. However, conflict is an element of every relationship. It is part of the territory of having relationships. If you are in a relationship with someone, you will eventually have conflict of some sort. Church is a system of relationships and interrelationships, and therefore people within a church will have conflict. They will disagree on functions, on programs, on the way to go about doing something, the way to win people to Jesus Christ. There will be conflict. And so every pastor or leader needs to learn how to effectively deal with conflict, how to manage conflict that is a part of the reality of relationships. As leaders, we are often called upon many times to navigate the landscape of conflict, sometimes not even within ourselves or about ourselves, but conflict that may be within the group that we are leading. We also need to help others through the tasks of conflict, negotiation, compromise, boundary setting, and grace giving. These are all aspects of conflict management and are critical to the maintenance of relationships. Healthy conflict management is possible, but it does take intentionality. And we must learn to manage conflict and provide critical keys to living in a culture where there is conflict and still manage to keep our integrity and our sense of self. This is not an easy task. The premises of my conference are threefold. First, conflict is a part of the human condition. It's a part of relationships. Second, conflict can be constructive. And third, how you respond to conflict makes all the difference. It determines much of the outcome. My information mainly comes from Murray Bowen. Murray Bowen was the father of the theory of family systems called Bowen theory. He talked about family systems as emotional systems and said that we are all a part of these emotional systems. And of course, in the church, because we come from families, churches also are part of emotional family systems. Let me give you a systems introduction. The first fact of a systems introduction is that any person or event stands in relationship to something or someone else. If I am standing in a room and another person comes into a room, I stand in relationship to that person in the room. However, I also stand in relationship to the persons who are outside of the room, the persons whom I have had contact with, not just in the past day or the past year, but in my whole life. Any person or event stands in relationship to something or someone else. In the same way, a body, which is a system, is all one, and the parts make up the whole. They do not stand alone. So a system is made up of a bunch of microsystems. As an example, the body is made up of the circulatory system, the muscular system, the nervous system, the reproductive system, the respiratory system, the skeletal system, the endocrine system, the digestive system, and the excretory system. There are other systems that make up the body, however, these are the main ones. It is not possible to take a part of the whole and fully understand the functioning. You can't take the muscular system out of the body and look at that separately as if it has nothing to do with the rest of the body, the circulatory system or the skeletal system. You must look at the muscular system in relationship to the rest of the systems that make up the body. The parts or the systems, the different microsystems, function as they do because of the presence of the other parts. My muscular system responds or functions the way it does because I have a skeletal system. If I did not have a skeletal system, I could not function in the same way with my muscular system. Bowen says that a change in one part produces a change in another part, and also in the whole. There is a ripple in the system. And health is a manifestation of this process. What affects the mind also affects the body, and vice versa. What affects the muscular system also affects the skeletal system, and also affects the circulatory system, and vice versa. We can't expect the parts to function separately and without relationship to the other system. There are different ways of thinking about this. The first would be separate parts thinking. It's a cause and effect thinking, in that the muscular system does something and that affects the circulatory system, or that affects the skeletal system. This is separate parts thinking. However, Bowen works on a systems way of thinking, co-causal. The muscular system affects the skeletal system, and the skeletal system at the same time is affecting the muscular system. For instance, in a family, a dad may hit a mom, may abuse the mother in the family. The mother reacts to the dad's abuse in one way or another. One way of responding may be that the mom kicks the child or hits the child. The child then reacts to the dad and the mom based on the fact that the child has been hit, and the child's relationship with the mom and dad are then intertwined. The child may also then interact with the dog, the family dog. The family dog responds not just because of the child, but also because of the mom and the dad. The dog bites the postman. The postman has simply come to deliver the mail, but the postman then reacts and responds to the dog, but also to the mom and the dad and the child. All of these things are intertwined, and you can see how convoluted that can become. It becomes a very complicated weave of systems. The whole system explains the parts. The whole family and the family system is explained by and explains the different persons and the different entities in the family, the mom, the dad, the child, and the dog. You cannot separate the child from the response and the reaction to the mother and to the father and to the dog. They all are co-causal. The child cries, the mom hits the child, the dad hits the mom loves the child or brings the child closer perhaps. All of these are co-causal. They are not one line, but instead they are intertwined together. So A does not affect B, and B affects C. A affects B and C. C affects B and A. B affects C and A. Do you understand the intertwining of the relationships? That is an important part of systems thinking. The systems, the parts in the system affect the whole. The problems then that belong to the system belong to the whole system. The distinguishing thing in relationships thinking is that emotional processes are an integral part of the system. My thinking and my emotion both affect the relationship. My relationship affects other people and is affected by other people. Many times you may have heard we are a sum of all of our experiences. And I would add to that, we are not just a sum of all our experiences, but of our reaction to those experiences or our response to those experiences. A systems approach then attends to the interrelatedness of the parts, not just the cause and effect, but the relationship that the effect has on the cause and the cause has on the effect. So they are all interrelated and conflicted together. We will look at, therefore, the congregation as a living system or an organism, as a body is. Like the body, the parts of the congregation, the people in the congregation, the situations that are going on the congregation, even the facility that the congregation meets in, all make up the whole. The trouble with this is that we live with and in a variety of systems again. So there is an additional complication. Our expectations of the Christian community far exceed those we hold for other communities to which we belong. Thomas Aquinas stated, though, that grace does not abolish nature. Even in a Wesleyan holiness tradition such as the Church of God, we must confess that we are still human beings and we react to things and persons around us, informed by other systems around us. And a healthy congregation, Peter Steinke, who is a systems theorist as well, and who wrote Healthy Congregations, a Systems Approach, said that a healthy congregation is one that actively and responsibly addresses or heals its disturbances, the things that may come up within the system. That is what a healthy system does. A healthy system is not one with an absence of trouble or an absence of conflict, but one that responsibly addresses that conflict. Every congregation, every family will know trouble, will know disruption, will know conflict, and will know dysfunction. Knowing ourselves well enough to learn from these inevitable conflicts can contribute to stronger and healthier congregations and families. The church is an emotional family system with all the ensuing processes that take place in an emotional family system. It is both a presence of anxiety and of conflict within the church, and it can be a place where you can responsibly address these conflicts and these anxieties. It is a part of our lives, addressing conflicts and anxiety. Neither anxiety nor conflict is bad or evil inherently. It is the response to that conflict or that anxiety that can become sinful. And as leaders, we have to know this and address this in a healthy manner. The key is that the anxiety or the conflict does not have to contaminate the relationships. It does not have to destroy or damage a relationship. It depends on our response. Let me give you a further example of family systems and church systems, just in case you're trying to figure this out. Within the family system, you have the relationship between a husband and wife. You may have a relationship between siblings. You may have the mother-child relationship, the father-child relationship. You may have the in-laws and the husband relationship, the in-laws and the wife relationship. You will have the family of origin of the husband and the family of origin of the wife. Those are all a part of the nuclear family system. In a church system, you have the relationship between the pastor and the board chair, or the board of elders chair. You may have the relationship between a parishioner and another parishioner. You will have the relationship between the pastor's family and a parishioner, or the pastor's family and the parishioner's family. You have the relationship between the pastor and the parishioner, between the trustees and the board of elders, between the pastor and the secretary or an office administrator, between the pastor and other pastors or associate pastors in the church. You will have the relationship between the pastor's family and the pastor, and between one family in a congregation and another family in a congregation. All of these are parts of emotional systems, and they intermingle together when you come together with a church. As well as a family system and a church system, you have other systems outside of the church that will affect who you are in the church. Your cultural system, your political system. The media is a system. Your ethnic system, the climate that you live in, and the geographical region that you live in. The structural systems within your communities, the communication system you may have, the economic systems, your religious systems, your educational systems, the government is a system, and the other emotional systems. Now think of all those systems that are in your orbit and contribute to your way of thinking. Where I live in Western Pennsylvania, much of our area is rural. However, there are certain pockets of Pennsylvania that are not rural, but are a part of a city. For instance, the middle of downtown Pittsburgh would be different than the middle of Rossiter, Pennsylvania, which is a small rural town. They function differently. The systems function differently, and therefore the families function differently. So is it any wonder that when we go into a church or a congregation, there is conflict? Because we all come from these different family systems, and we all come from these different emotional systems that are swirling around us. The health of the emotional system determines how the other systems function in relationship to that system. If you have a challenged educational system, that will affect your family, it will affect your church. It will also be affected by the families that come into that educational system and the churches that are a part of the community. Therefore, we have the family system's understanding that everything is co-causal. You do not have, unfortunately, we cannot say this is the reason this happens. There are multiple factors and variables within the system. So when two individuals come together, a crowd of other people are with them emotionally. When you interact with other people, you interact with their systems. If you think in your mind about a board sitting together, having a board meeting, the persons that are sitting at the board table are not sitting there alone, but they are sitting there with a host of witnesses behind them that have given them their experiences and that have interacted with them. When they come into the meeting on a Tuesday night at 7 p.m., they are coming into the meeting with all the experiences that have happened in their family, in their workplace, in their school, in their community, in the government, over the past day, week, month, year, and over their lives. This is the end of part 1 of Can't We All Just Get Along?